focus you've got this week, considering a different opponent, different venue?
No, not really. Not really. I was really pleased with the way the side responded last week, and back to playing the way we want to play, and those focus areas will stay very similar for this week's game.
Can you play so many tall forwards on the SCG?
Oh, I don't know if we've got that many tall forwards. I think we've got, our forward line's been pretty functional all year. I guess I see Lynch and McGovern more as running forwards who can also take a mark, so it probably leaves Taylor and JJ.
How's JJ going with his ankle?
Yeah, he's good. He trained this morning, so he had a bit of flu yesterday. That's why he wasn't out on the track yesterday. Not sure it did him any favours today with the flu and in the weather, but no, he trained today and he did what he needed to do, so yeah, he'll be fine.
What does it sort of say about Taylor being voted in that thing as a footy club? How proud, and I guess you see it every day in sort of the role that he plays.
Well, it's fantastic for him that the players in the competition see him as a really strong and committed leader. So that's great recognition for him. He knows from a leadership viewpoint he's building and he's learning as he goes, and he's going to get better and better for us. So it's good recognition, but there's a lot more to work on for Tex.
What did you make of the Franklin issue last week? Was that just something that shouldn't have happened and obviously won't happen this week?
Yeah, look, those things are always a difficult one when things are said on the field, and I think people respect and understand there's a really fine line on a number of matters, and I think it's sort of been dealt with appropriately.
Sydney obviously will play a very contested style of game, and you expect that's what they're going to try and make of the game. Do you feel like you need to try and break it open, make it a faster running game?
Oh, not necessarily. I think I said last week, finals is a different kettle of fish altogether, and I think we saw that last weekend with the games. Probably our game opened up a little bit earlier than some of the other games, but we expect from Sydney, what we expect from every team, especially Sydney. One of their strengths is their contested ball and their midfield side of things, and we think that's one of our strengths. So it's a good opportunity for us to bring that in a final.
Bloody obviously, goalless last week. Do you take much out of that, or does that make you a bit nervous that he's due some this week?
Oh, well, look, he's a fantastic player and obviously one of their keys, and he's been playing a little bit further up the ground. Whether they stay with him playing as high up the ground this week or they bring him back more inside 50, time will tell. We'll probably prepare for both, knowing that he's obviously one of their keys, and he's one of their guys they target regularly going forward. So we've got a few options there with some of our backs, both up the ground and deep as well.
Is it ominous to take on Sydney after what happened to them last week, that you expect such a reaction that it may be even more difficult to contend with them?
It's an interesting one because that's sort of the history of the finals, isn't it? You're always going to get second week of the finals, you get one team coming in who's off a win and one team off a loss. Spoke to our players this morning about that. I'd be really disappointed if we weren't able to match their intensity and effort based on them coming off a loss and us coming off a win. I think we've got as much to play for as Sydney do. We played some good footy last week and we played good footy all year, so our responsibility is to bring the same attitude and effort as we brought last week, and Sydney will bring what Sydney bring.
What did you learn from the way the Giants beat them, I guess?
Yeah, well, it's clearly noted in the press. They were very strong around the contest. They tackled really well. They got pressure both on the ball and then they were able to spread really effectively. So, look, we expect Sydney will respond, but as I said, we'll be looking to respond ourselves in terms of what we bring to the game.
Did they do anything tactically though that you noticed, or?
There's a couple of little things, and we look at it from a structural viewpoint as to how do we want to set up the game, and every team's different with different personnel, and we've got different personnel to GWS, so there's things you can learn from that game. That game wasn't at the SCG, so we're looking a little bit into playing the SCG and how sides maybe have been effective at the SCG, and we'll sort of take all that information and feed it through the hopper and see what comes out for what works or what could work for our group, and go in with a really clear plan.
You're noting already about what the SCG will do to Adelaide and the way you play your football.
Oh, it's not so much what it does to us and our football. It's more the dimensions of the ground, what it allows you to do from the centre sort of forward, and also the corridor becomes an area whereby given such a short ground, if you can get control of the ball in that area, it allows you to attack goal pretty directly. So, but the ground itself has a component. It's a bit like we spoke previously about Subi Oval. You've got some different things there to adjust to, but fundamentally the way we play won't change. It'll probably be there'll be some focus areas and some areas we just need to adapt for both the ground and opposition. That's what happens week to week.
Given the fact you've only played one game at SCG in the past 4 years, how important is it to get the players there, get accustomed to it, and to talk to them about the specifics about the ground?
Oh, we started that process this morning. So, this morning we set the ground up similar in terms of size, so they get a bit of a feel for it. And obviously we'll train there on Friday and have a bit of a look when we land, and that just gives them a feeling for it. But we've got to be careful. We don't sort of try and set everything up around a ground or an opposition. We still want to fundamentally play the same way we play, just adapt as we need to.
Speaking to the boys this morning, how's the headspace?
They're really good. Really good. I mean, I think pleasing part last week was the response following what was, we noted, an un-Adelaide-like performance against West Coast, and they're determined to push on in the finals. We're not seeing ourselves as going, we've won a final, we're happy. There's no level of contentment with our players at all. They see this as a great opportunity to take another scalper, move a step forward.
Is there any need to change the side?
Well, that's a discussion for later on at match committee. And we'll assess that as we need to.
Played Ricky Henderson up forward in the Sandford last week. Was that a bit of a test for you to see how he would go if you needed him this weekend in the fortnight?
Oh, look, it was just what sort of came out of the game. It was an opportunity, Rick, to go forward, and he went forward and did some nice things.
Did you have to bring the players down to earth quicker than normal after the game, or did you sense that they moved on?
No, look, I thought their response post-game was pretty mature, to be honest. I think they recognised it was a good win, but it's a win that gets you to week 2 of the finals. And that was the sort of response I was expecting from them. It wasn't one of euphoria. We've won a final. Well done. It's like we've won it. We move on, and now we're getting ready clearly for Sydney this weekend.
It was pretty obvious that Daniel Taylor would be best against Franklin around the goal square. But if he goes deeper into the middle of the field, who's your best option then?
Well, there's a couple of options. We've got Cole Hardigan, who's played further up the ground, Jake Lever. It was interesting last week, a couple of times GWS went with the smaller players on him higher up the ground. So, that's the discussion we'll have at match committee as to what it best looks like. And Daniel, I think last time we played him, probably played on him most of the night and went up the ground with him as well. So, our guys will be able to adjust and adapt as need be, and it'll come down to the communication. And again, like all games do, our backs benefit from some pressure around the ball.
Mick Malthouse spoke out on the radio this morning about Adelaide's midfield, and he said that he believes Adelaide's midfield is slow and unaccountable. What's your response to that?
Okay, that's an interesting opinion. I don't necessarily agree with that, obviously. I think you'll find our midfield is really quite a very hard-working midfield, to be honest. And I think we saw probably the night against West Coast was an aberration, whereas I thought last week our ability to transition the ball and transition with the ball both ways was at a really high level.
If you need to, because I know Dan Hanbury had a huge game in round 4, he picked up 38 touches. If you need to put a tagger on him, do you have a player that can do that? Or I know Adelaide don't traditionally use taggers, but is that something you might consider?
Well, that's something we've spoken about probably in the lead into finals. And we sort of had some plans in place last week in the event, maybe a Wells or Harvey started to really generate some balls. So that's something, again, we'll consider through the latter part of the week and talk to the players about as a possible go-to. They've got some really dangerous midfielders, whether it's Hanbury or it's Mitchell or Kennedy, Parker, Jack. There's a few there. So we've just got to be seeing what the game's telling us, the influence that players having on it, and then we'll assess our best option to try and close that down.
Is it suggesting you've had a change of thought about tagging?
No, not really. No, we've always said we want to play. We want to have flexibility of how we play, and that's one of the options we have. That's existed all year. We haven't used it, but doesn't mean that it's not there. It's just something we haven't had to call upon as yet.
So if you've had that in mind, or have you prepared for it?
Oh, we've got a few guys in mind. Depends who the opponent is you want to work on. So there's a number of guys that we could call upon.
Did you find it a bit strange that the AFL scheduled this final at a night so you couldn't get back into Adelaide and then put you on a 6-day break? Seemed to be you got the rawest end of the deal.
Look, I guess that's the unfortunate part when you finish outside the top 4. Obviously, we knew we were going to be travelling, and the AFL set the schedule. So, we have some small input into that, but the reality is it is what it is. All we can be accountable for is turning up and ready to play. What
do you think that experience from last year, Don? Obviously, you weren't with the club, but the experience the players you went through, obviously losing to Hawthorn that second week, does that steal the resolve of the guys to go forward and keep this premiership dream alive?
I think that probably reflected a little bit in their attitude after the win last week. I think it's fair to say last year after the first final win, the feeling I got talking to some of the coaches and players was there was this euphoric state about a great win, and that probably didn't help them get ready for the second week of the finals. But I think this year we've been far more measured, in terms of we moved on pretty quickly. We did our review, and now we focus clearly on Sydney.
Is there a quality that Adelaide has to bring for this game to make sure it wins?
I think it's the same quality we want to bring to every game, and that's our pressure. The contest is going to be on early. We expect that. That's finals footy. Spoke about it last week. Your ability in the contest, not only the ground ball, but the aerial contest, and then your work rate. Those two things there hold you in really good stead.